Howdy everybody, this is Omar, your audio amigo, back with another episode of the High Roller Hunt for y'all. This particular episode has been quite a long time in the making, and I'm very happy to finally have this set in-house. This set has been getting hyped up by bloggers, audio show attendees, and all sorts of other people for months on social media and Twitter, and now I finally have it here. This, of course, is AFUL's new flagship IEM, the Dawn X, priced at an eye-watering $1,300 US. The Dawn X is the first AFUL IEM to feature not only bone conduction drivers, but Sony and ESTs as well. Featuring all of AFUL's famous acoustic engineering and electric technology, does the Dawn X justify its cost in the face of its younger siblings and family members? Well, let's find out together. As usual, a quick disclaimer, I purchased this unit from HiFiGo, but I was offered a reviewer discount. Because I did not pay full price for this set, I have gone ahead and activated the paid promotion feature here on YouTube. I do these disclaimers because I believe in full transparency when there's potential bias besides my own personal taste at play. Thank you so much to HiFiGo for the discount on these, and thank you to all of you watching for your continued support. It's thanks to all of you that I get to try out stuff like this and get discounts like that. So thank you all so much for watching. I really appreciate it. We'll start things off with the unboxing experience, and honestly speaking, we're not off to a great start here. The unboxing experience here is essentially identical to the Cantor, and that set is $500 less than this. Inside the box, you will get the same blue leatherette AFUL branded carrying case. Inside is identical. You get the same sort of soft touch interior with the little mesh pouch. It's a nice case, not exactly pocketable, but it's, pretty crush resistant, and the top is padded nicely. Inside that, you will find a AFUL branded leather cable tie that holds the cable together. You will find a little cleaning tool for the nozzles, and you will find 4 small boxes containing the ear tips. You get AFUL standard sort of solid core silicone tips. You get a softer set of silicone tips here in a different shape. You get slightly narrower bore black silicone tips there, and you get another set of solid core white silicone tips. I was really hoping that AFUL would upgrade the unboxing experience and accessories, seeing as this is their first kilobuck IEM. I would have liked to see a cleaning cloth, a shirt clip, some branded premium ear tips, maybe a different case, a little envelope with graphics and stats and a story of how they developed this IEM, that sort of thing. Other kilobuck sets come with that sort of thing. Honestly, the Dawn X with this accessories package just doesn't feel all that special when the Cantor has the exact same box, overall accessories, and feeling for $500 less. The same can sadly be said of the stock cable. Don't get me wrong, it feels really nice in the hands. It's soft, it's supple, it wraps well, it behaves, it doesn't exhibit any prominent memory, it lays down flat, it's generally a very nice feeling cable to use and to handle. As far as the hardware goes, I think that this amp connector is a straight up downgrade compared to the one on the Cantor. That one had a nice machined contour on it that helped with grip on heavier amps and stubborn ports. I'll pull up a picture here. It was just nice. It was bespoke for the Cantor. This is just extremely standard for AFUL. It matches the Performer 7, it matches the Explorer. Yeah, it just a standard cylinder with AFUL laser etched onto it in your choice of 3.5 and 4.4. The next issue is that this is not modular at all. Now, this is common for AFUL. They just don't do modular connectors on any of their IEMs, but it would have been pretty special to see a modular connector for the first time ever on their first kilobuck flagship. I do like the Y-split. It has the new AFUL logo here, and it has nice branding on it. I dig the little A logo, and I do like the chin slider. It works well on these cables. It slides well, and it sits flush against the Y-split, which is always good. The ear hooks are comfortable, and interestingly, you can see that these are the same sort of 5-axis, really nicely machined 2-pin connectors that they had on the Cantor. So if they made the decision to keep the 2-pin connectors and ear hooks from the Cantor, why not use the rest of the hardware from the Cantor? It's a bit of a head scratcher. They kept sort of one aspect of the Cantor's sort of bespoke machined cable and not the other two. Just doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me, and while this is a very nice cable and it feels premium to me, I can't help but think that this would have just been better with the Cantor's hardware and modular terminations. Really big missed opportunity here, just like, honestly, the rest of the packaging. The design and build of the shells themselves is classic AFUL. These are full 3D printed shells so that they can pull off all of their, complex acoustic structures and sound tubes and all that other wizardry, just like the rest of their IEMs. Unlike a lot of their other IEMs, however, as you can see, the Dawn X features metal filters on the nozzles, which is a shame because there are 5 individual tubes down there that lead to each of the main driver groups, and you can't see them, which I think would be pretty cool. However, that does mean that you will be reasonably protected from moisture and debris falling into the nozzles for the Dawn X, which I will say has been a problem for people on the Performer 7 and the Explorer and other sort of things. As you can see, the outside here bears no real ventilation whatsoever, except for this large hole on the back there next to the Dawn X logo. Fortunately, AFUL have incorporated the same internal pressure relief vent system that they first used on the Performer 8 and have been using to great effect on a lot of their IEMs since. What that means is no pressure buildup, no driver flex, no real annoyances whatsoever. I haven't taken these on a flight yet, but I will. I expect that they'll be absolutely fine. Overall, honestly, pretty typical AFUL build quality. I expect these to last and that they don't have that long, thin sort of nozzle weakness that the Cantor does, so hopefully these will survive a knock or two. It is a bit of a shame that the build on their flagship is really similar to everything all the way down to the Explorer, but they didn't really need to change too much, and honestly, the resin 3D print here lets them do their acoustic wizardry, so I don't blame them at all for that. As I go ahead and pull up the specifications here, I'm also going to have some visual aids for you guys because we have a lot to discuss here. Like the Cantor, the Dawn X is packing 14 different drivers in each shell. Unlike the Cantor, however, these are a mix of 4 different types, making it a quad-brid. There is a single 10mm liquid silicone dynamic driver, you have 8 balanced armatures, 4 Sonian ESTs, and what I believe is a Sonian bone conduction unit, but I could be wrong on that one. I did confirm with AFUL themselves that the ESTs are Sonians. I'll pull up the crossover network here on the graphic here. Basically, the dynamic driver is doing everything 300 Hz and below. There is a set of balanced armatures working from 300 to 1.5 kHz. There's another set of balanced armatures working from 1.5 to 3 kHz, and a third set of balanced armatures from 3 kHz to 5 kHz. At 5 kHz, the electrostatic tweeters from Sonian take over and will do everything from 5 kHz and up. AFUL is quite proud of that. They're calling it their wideband EST implementation, whereas most ESTs are only active from 8 kHz and above. AFUL has stretched theirs down to 5 kHz, so you effectively hear more of the BAs. As you can see from the graph as well, the bone conduction driver is active from 500 to 3 kHz, but we'll talk about that later in the bone conduction section. Like most AFUL IEMs, these are extremely easy to drive out of basically anything with a headphone jack. They will, however, change sound a bit with impedance adapters or higher output impedance sources, so do keep an eye on that. As far as weight goes, the shells are under 9 grams a side, but the cable adds some heft to the whole package. Nothing absurdly heavy. This is the most complex set of drivers AFUL has packed into an IEM, so there's quite a bit to talk about here, but outside of that massive slew of drivers, this is a basic, typical AFUL IEM design. As I go ahead and pull up the cool wall, I want to talk about how conflicted I am with the overall design here on the Dawn X. On the one hand, I'm a huge fan of stabilized wood, and I like the red color here, the little flecks of the wood, and how each individual IEM will look unique from any other set. However, I do want to express some disappointment here. If you look at AFUL's last 2 releases, the Performer 7 and the Cantor, both of those had what I would say is some sort of cultural or artistic inspiration behind those faceplate designs. The Performer 7 adopted a mosaic pattern from the Suzhou Gardens in China, and the Cantor famously paid homage to the Van Gogh Starry Night painting. When the Dawn X was announced, it had sort of a generic faceplate on it, and I was expecting another sort of culturally enriching set of faceplates, an easy Sub-Zero IEM to go along with those other 2. So you can sort of imagine my disappointment when these red stabilized wood faceplates showed up and we were told that it was going to be the only option for the Dawn X. Cantor's marine faceplates are fine, but I clearly preferred the Starry Night version, so I was kind of hoping we'd get a second version here that was more artistic. That does not seem to be the case. They are, however, still stabilized wood, and I am a sucker for stabilized wood, so I will be putting these in cool. But I just wanted to let you guys know that I am legitimately disappointed that there's no cultural enrichment or artistic homage going on here. It's just a bit of a bummer from a brand that appeared to be doing something different with its shell design, something a bit enriching from a cultural perspective. No matter what I may think, however, no one really cares what I think, so let's go ahead and check in with the discerning ladies of the Council of Ladies and see what they think of the Dawn X. Well, I can tell you one thing, they're pretty. We have a 4-to-1 score for these being pretty, with only lady number 4 being the holdout. She does tend to prefer more blue or conventional shaped IEMs, so that's that explained right there. In terms of comments or compliments, we have the exact same 4-to-1 score, which is pretty good for AFUL. They tend to do well, and 4-to-1 is about as good as it's going to get, considering lady number 4 doesn't really like their overall IEM shape and design. Looking at their thoughts, it looks like size might be a bit of a concern for some of the ladies, but overall, they're really digging the stabilized wood here. It's a bit of gemstone comments going on, pretty. Yeah, it just looks like the ladies in general really like the stabilized wood. I can't blame them. I don't think the ladies had the same expectations that I did for these being culturally enriching or based on art in any way. So their answers make perfect sense, and yeah, these are very good looking. In terms of comfort, compared to the rest of AFUL's IEMs, these are quite large. You can see that they're a bit taller and a bit just chunkier overall compared to some of the other ones. It does make sense. You have a big dynamic driver in here, as well as the voltage boosters for the ESTs. So there's 2 of those. And then you also have the bone conduction driver and all of the custom tubing for all of that. So it makes sense that these are a bit chunky, and on top of that, these are also sort of semi-custom shells like the rest of the AFUL IEMs, which means these might not work for all ears as well as they do for others. For me, fortunately, these fit absolutely beautifully. The pressure relief system, as I mentioned, did its job. I've been wearing these at my desk constantly for gaming, videos, music, editing, basically everything. I really don't feel the extra size in my ears all that much, and the weight being nice and low means that I have no issues with these whatsoever. My wife actually gave these a score of technical pass on the tiny ear test. She was not expecting these to fit, but once she got them in, they actually formed a very secure seal that didn't fail with eating, laughter, or talking. She was able to wear them for longer listening sessions while at work, and while she said that they weren't exactly comfortable in her ears, she didn't feel like she wanted to immediately pull them out of discomfort, or because of discomfort after the first few songs, which was a surprising result, but I think a fairly good one. For all of you other tiny-eared folks out there, try to find a place to demo these before you commit to them. They might not work for you as well as they worked for us. Before we get into the sound, let's talk about the bone conduction effects here on the Dawn X. If we go with my turbocharger analogy from the last couple of bone conduction reviews, the bone conduction driver in the Dawn X is what I would describe as a fuel economy turbo. It's basically happy all of the time, and the effects on performance that it has are fairly subtle, but to my ears at least, noticeable. This is what I tend to refer to as soundstage bone conduction. It has no tonal deficiencies or artifacts at all. It's not hollow, wooden. It doesn't affect the tonality whatsoever. Some people might not even notice the implementation here. If you do notice it, you will notice, like I do, a very subtle increase in the perceived 3D soundstage of the Dawn X. Things will just sound just that little bit wider, that little bit more impactful. This will not buzz like the Flip Ears or the Symphony Ears IEMs, so don't expect a big, exciting, buzzy bone conduction implementation. This is more on the subtle soundstagey side. It's very much like the Panonfan 3S. It's very nearly identical here. Pure soundstage, no real downsides. I just don't expect this to rumble and shake in your ears like some of the bass head-focused, rumbly bone conduction IEMs. As far as the rest of the sound goes, we'll start with the bass, and it's fantastic. It's energetic, it's punchy, it's very well textured. There's a very long, thin bass tube that connects the DD to the pressure relief structure and then out to the nozzle. It functions as a sort of bass bypass tube. That, combined with the performance of that big LSR driver, makes for some really fantastic bass overall. Those big droning bass notes at the beginning of the chorus in Doggy God Street rumble really nicely. The onset of those notes is very fast. The hits feel very visceral and satisfying. This reminds me a bit of the AFUL Explorer, but if it had even better texture, better detail, and just better tonality overall. Moving up in the range, the bass guitars and kick drums are also very satisfying here on the Dawn X. One Night in Bangkok sounded absolutely fantastic. The bass guitar strings are buzzy, authoritative, and present. The big kick drum has this great thumpiness to it, and none of the lower synth notes felt drowned out by any of it. The layering is great, and there's no masking going on here. It's a really great showing on the low end by the Dawn X here. I think it's very clearly taken inspiration from the Explorer and the Performer 7 and then improved on those. Don't think, however, that energetic bass has bothered the mid-range at all, because the mids here are wonderfully detailed, forward, and beautifully clear. There's this lovely warmth and body to the lower mids. Hollow Hunger sounds wonderfully emotional here on the Dawn X. The vocals are clear, the acoustic guitar and the castanets just cut through the music wonderfully. The strings, sort of, you can feel them causing each other to ring when single notes are struck. The strings next to it sort of buzz a little bit. The acoustic bass has this wonderful tonality and buzziness to it. The whole track just sounds gorgeous on the Dawn X, as does most of the other things I threw at it, honestly. Female vocals here are done in what I will call the classic AFUL fashion, where the fundamentals are well represented, but they're neither forward or pushed back compared to the instrumentals or the harmonics of the vocals. In my opinion, female vocalists are given just enough energy to shine in the mix without becoming overly dominant or spotlit. This will be either a good or a bad thing, depending on how you like your female vocals, but I personally don't mind it too much. I thought Madonna in Hung Up, she's already mixed to be pretty far forward of the instrumentation, and while she doesn't like rise above the instrumentation on a pedestal like she can on some other more female vocal focused sets, she doesn't sound muffled, husky, nasal, or tonally affected, or like she's having to fight the rather energetic ABBA-sourced instrumentation here. It's very correct but not boosted execution of female vocals, I think, is classic AFUL. The rest of the mid-range, honestly, reminds me of the Magic 1, the Cantor, the Performer 7, just better layered, better separated, and more detailed. Great stuff here going on in the mid-range. The upper mids and the treble are also what I would call classic AFUL. The female vocal harmonics are present and boosted to the level that will give the female vocals the depth and dynamism that will help them sort of pop a little bit, but not to the point where it becomes really annoying or fatiguing. Yoasobi's Idol, for example, the crowd chants, the backing vocals, the doubled vocals in production, all of that throws off a lot of harmonics, and this track can become really shouty and really fatiguing with some sets. That's not the case at all on the Dawn X. This, I think, is just the right amount of sparkle and airiness without having to stray into, like I said, sibilant or fatiguing territory. Really classic AFUL as far as I'm concerned. The treble, I feel, is very Cantor-inspired, or at least that's how I personally felt it. It's very revealing, very technical, very analytical, but somehow it maintains a smooth and controlled feel to the sound that doesn't really stray into overly fatiguing. There was no graininess or sharp bitiness. It is incisive, but it doesn't cut you. It's sparkly, but it doesn't blind you. It's shimmery, but it doesn't get overly washy or annoyingly wobbly, if you understand what I'm even saying there. Carry On My Wayward Son has those bell hits on the cymbal and the tambourine that are sort of all over the guitar and organ solos in the second half of the song. Those can get really fatiguing on a brighter tune set, especially at higher volumes, and I just didn't find that to be the case here on the Dawn X. The bell hits were sharp and they had a lot of emotion to them, but they never got annoying or fatiguing. I don't recall a single instance where I had to reach for the volume knob to turn it down on the Dawn X, and I think that that's a great indicator of how the treble can be aggressive but controlled. It's very well done. AFUL, I feel, has always done a really good job of making a very highly technical set sound smooth, palatable, and polished. And I think they've pulled off that mojo yet again here with the Dawn X. The low end is just so dynamic and detailed while still being emotional. That LSR DD does a fantastic job with the low end details. I loved listening to Steely Dan. Steely Dan loves the Dawn X, and Black Cow with that buzzy bass echo in one ear just sounded effortlessly real here. I got a little bit in the left ear as well. It was just really sharp, really crisp, well-mastered tracks I felt really came to life here on the Dawn X, and especially live albums as well. Waltz for Debbie, for example, the Take-Two version that I listened to, which is the live recording, it was almost too easy for the Dawn X here. The background conversations, the glassware hits, the echo of the bass guitar off of the walls, those sort of room effects that you get from the crowd, it was all here, and it was wonderful to listen to. In terms of technical performance, I do feel that this does beat the Cantor, and it also beats the Letshuoer Cadenza 12. This is a very technical set, but it's done in a very palatable way. It's not going to shove the detail up your nose or in your face. It's going to put it there so you'll notice it, but it's not going to make a huge deal out of it. if that makes any sense. But now it's time to talk about where that bone conduction driver shines, which is the soundstage and the stereo separation. Stereo separation on the Dawn X is super wide. I already mentioned Steely Dan, but Cousin Dupree and its very stereo presentation of instruments sounded wonderful here on the Dawn X. You had the different instruments in each ear. They had all the space they needed and then some. It was a very wide replay. It and all the other sort of very stereo tracks that I typically listen to were a great listen here. Imaging and Perceive 3 Soundstage were also excellent, even on tracks where I don't typically expect a ton of spatial information. Eat That Chicken, for example. It's got a surprising amount of spatial information baked into that track from the way it was recorded. The bass, the vocals, and the drums are all placed really well in terms of depth and width on the Dawn X, and I would say that this is some of the best staging I've heard in IEM, barring some of those open-air drivers like the Fur RN6. The bone conduction effect does work for me. However, if it doesn't work for you, I don't know what you would expect here. I hope that this would still sound very wide and spacious. I do kind of wish there was a switch on the back here to let you turn the bone conduction on and off. That would probably make the IEM even larger. But on the Fan 3, for example, it was kind of nice to turn the bone conduction on and off to see if I was actually feeling it, which I was, which is why I'm telling you that I do feel it here and it works in a very similar way. Like the rest of the AFUL IEMs, this has a crossover board in it, or a passive adjustment board in it, that will cause the sound to change when you expose it to higher output impedance sources or impedance adapters. Pulling up the graph here, you can see that there's an inflection point at around 850 Hertz. Everything below that will get a bit of a boost, and everything above that will become attenuated. That really darkens the Dawn X. It pushes the upper mids and treble down, it controls them even more, and it really wakes up that LSR dynamic driver. It gets rumblier, it gets more just engaging. It's a fun distraction if you want to listen to some EDM or hip-hop tracks every once in a while, but in all honesty, I think it's a bit of a disservice to the Dawn X excellent tuning, so I personally would keep it stock, maybe throw one on every once in a while if you want to have some fun. The Dawn X then. If you own essentially any other AFUL IEM, the Dawn X will be a very familiar tuning for you. AFUL, in my opinion, does have a sort of house sound, and while they haven't really publicly shared their target curve in any of their marketing, as I pull up a graph here of all the AFUL IEMs I own, you can see that besides the bass on the Magic 1 being a little lean, there's a good commonality to all of AFUL's IEMs. If I had to describe the sound of the Dawn X using only its family members, I would say that it takes the bass energy of the Explorer, the bass texture and mid-range from the Performer 7, the technical performance, treble, and smoothness of a well-fitted Cantor, and then takes all of that, improves on every single bit of it, and then adds to the soundstage and imaging with that very subtle bone conduction driver implementation. I personally do think that the Dawn X makes a very logical flagship IEM for the AFUL family, and as such, if you have an Explorer, a Performer 7, or a Cantor, you will find the Dawn X a very familiar sounding upgrade. But before I get more into that sort of thing, let's get into the comparisons. We'll start with one of my personal benchmark IEMs, the HiSenior Mega5Est, priced at $550 US. While these two are shooting for a sort of similar warmish neutral sound signature, the Mega5Est comes with a much nicer accessories package, and honestly, it does make female vocals pop that little bit more than they do on the Dawn X. The Dawn X wins, however, in terms of bass texture, resolution, detail retrieval, imaging, perceived soundstage, and overall technical performance. But it kind of has to, because this is almost 3 times the cost of that. I do find that the slightly warmer, more detailed sound combined with the soundstage benefits of that bone conduction driver elevates what is honestly a very similar tuning on the Dawn X here to sort of the next level. I love both of these sets, but I do find myself preferring the Dawn X over the Mega5Est. If, however, you want to save a good amount of money and you have a lot of female vocals in your library and you prefer a more dynamic female vocal implementation, the Mega5Est is still a great choice if you want a warmish neutral sound with good technical performance. Why don't we bring in what used to be AFUL's previous flagship, the Dawn X's new little sister, the $800 Cantor, and see how close it can get. Well, honestly, these two take after each other quite a bit. The Cantor, even with all of its acoustic mazes for those dynamic drivers, can't really match the bass texture and feel and sort of dynamism that the LSR dynamic driver here in the Dawn X offers. And despite the Cantor's absolutely incredible imaging and staging, I do feel that because of that bone conduction driver, the Dawn X wins that battle as well. In terms of technicalities, the Cantor is very nearly as technical, but I swear that I could hear 2 or 3 small things easier in the Dawn X compared to the Cantor. This is going to depend on you, your ears, and your songs, but for me, the Dawn X was the slightly more technical of the two AFUL IEMs. The important caveat here is that all of this is assuming you can fit the Cantor in your ears as AFUL intended. The fact of the matter is, not everybody was able to hear the smooth technical showcase of an IEM that was the Cantor without getting the unintended, sharper, more fatiguing sound of the shallower fit. Well, with the Dawn X, you don't really need to worry about the fit as much. It honestly just works. I use that phrase a lot recently. I'm sorry, I'm not trying to ape on Bethesda here. But yeah, the Dawn X will give you the intended Cantor smoothness and performance without the crazy fit. If, however, you can fit the Cantor properly, it can be a very compelling sort of budget alternative to the Dawn X, especially if this is on sale. Now for the hard one. Let's bring in my current daily driver IEMs. I know you guys are probably getting tired of seeing it, but I listen to it a lot, so I'm able to compare it pretty easily. It's my Letshuoer EJ07M Kinda Lava in custom resin, originally priced in this configuration at $830 US. The bass on the Kinda Lava is kind of similar to the Dawn X, but I do prefer the texture on the Dawn X overall. It just has a little bit of extra punch to me. It's a little bit more textured than the bass here on the Kinda Lava. The Kinda Lava, like the Mega5Est, is more forward with female vocals. It does have more emphasis on them that I really enjoy, especially with some of my anime songs. But the treble here just doesn't feel as spacious or airy or detailed as it does on the Dawn X. These two I honestly find more different than similar. The Dawn X is just smoother, the mids are more forward, and it's an overall more technical, spacious, slightly more neutral sound than the Kinda Lava. Being these two, as much as I adore the Kinda Lava, I did find myself preferring the Dawn X, even on some of those like anime-ish tracks, just for that spaciousness and that sort of extra emotion that this set can have with some of those songs. But what if the Kinda Lava calls in its big sister to fight this big new bully? Well, let's go ahead and do it. We'll bring in the $2,000 Cadenza 12. As you can see, this is the HiSenior Manta cable because I cannot stand the stock cable on the Cadenza 12. This, honestly, I'm going to actually move these two around because these two, I think, are a perfect illustration of a true neutral tuning versus a warm neutral tuning. The Cadenza 12 is less energetic in the bass, it's less punchy, it has less rumble, less slam, but outside of that, these two are really quite similar to each other. The Cadenza 12 does have that extra pop with female vocals, but I honestly find that the Dawn X matches or exceeds the Cadenza 12 in terms of imaging, staging, and overall technical performance. Value is a very subjective thing, and I think that this is another good showing of that sort of thing. For some people, the Dawn X will look like a bad value compared to the Cantor, or heck, the Cantor might look like a bad value compared to the Performer 7, and so on and so on. But honestly, you could also say that the Dawn X looks like a great value next to the Cadenza 12. This has better technical performance, better imaging and staging, and it's $700 less. You do get a much, and I do mean much less luxurious unboxing experience with the Dawn X compared to the Cadenza 12, but hey, the stock cable on the Dawn X runs rings around the garbage one that you get on the Cadenza 12, so that's something else to consider. Wrapping things up then, everything on this table, with the exception of the Cadenza 12, is what I would describe as a warmish neutral tuning. The Kinda Lava is the most forward with female vocals, followed by actually the Cadenza 12, then the Mega5Est, with both of the AFUL sisters having more of that normal, like, middle-of-the-road sounding female vocal presentation. In terms of technical performance, the Dawn X to me was the clear winner, followed by the Cadenza 12 and the Cantor. These two honestly are much closer to each other than I originally thought. Then you have the Kinda Lava and the Mega5Est in the rear, but again, this is by far the most affordable set here. I really don't like talking value in high roller hunt videos because it's an extremely subjective thing, different to each person. But personally speaking, I could see any of these IEMs being endgame for different people, and I feel extremely fortunate to be in the position where I got to A-B comparison all of these sets with my library for an extended period of time. So, as I bring up my high roller hunt rating scale, let's go ahead and address the elephant in the room, which is this scale doesn't exactly apply to the Dawn X here since, well, I own it. But for this video, I'm going to be pretending that this is a loaner set that I'm just going to be borrowing for a few weeks, and it will work out because, as you'll see later, this is about to leave. The Dawn X is a very interesting kilobuck IEM. Compared to the other IEMs that I've reviewed on the High Roller Hunt, this has easily the most Spartan accessories package. It's a big disappointment that it's basically exactly the same as on the Cantor. But what becomes very clear very early on in my time with this set is that essentially all the money that they would have spent on fancier leather and extra bits and paperwork and a bigger box, they've essentially put all of that money into drivers, crossovers, calculations for their resonators, sound tube math, and all of the goodness that's inside the actual shells. AFUL is not the only brand that has its flagship IEM look identical to their other models in terms of overall shape and size. But it's also common to see brands shower their flagship IEM in all of the bling and accessories that it takes to make that cost feel a little bit more justified. I'm going to say it again for the third time. I don't discuss value in these high roller hunt videos. It's subjective, and people shopping in this bracket don't really consider value as much. But I will say, you have the accessories taken out of the equation, and if you only consider the sound here, the Dawn X honestly looks like a great value compared to something like the Cadenza 12, and honestly a lot of the other multi-kilobuck sets that I've tried at audio shows or other things. If this was a loaner or a tour unit, I essentially would put up a saved search on AV Exchange on Reddit or on Headfights Classifieds, and I would be basically refreshing every 2 or 3 days to wait for a used unit of these to come up, because although the Cantor fits me just fine, and I do get its nice smooth tuning, and I do love listening to it, something about the Dawn X, be it that bone conduction driver or the ESTs, or it's that big LSR DD for the low end, something about this is just special to me compared to the Cantor. I would really want this in my life. And therefore, I'm going to be putting this up in the top priority section right next to the Craft Ears Omnium, which I have been looking to try and find at a price that's just more approachable to me. The Dawn X is an extremely fitting flagship for AFUL. It takes their house sound, applies it to an assortment of great drivers, and then they put all of their technology in here to get it to sound as good as they possibly could, and I think that they have pulled it off beautifully. And while I'm not a fan of the unboxing or the shells because of what they could have been, that sort of thing really only matters once, and as far as the cable goes, well, there are a ton of premium aftermarket options that would suit this color scheme rather well. The recommendation section for the Dawn X is going to be roughly similar to the one for the Cadenza 12, as this is also a neutral-ish tuned set. Unlike the Cadenza 12, however, this carries a bit more coloration to the sound. Fortunately, that coloration manifests as a little bit of extra bass and a little bit of extra warmth that I think will be palatable to the vast majority of people. If you've been looking at some of the $2,000 and up sort of neutral-ish tuned sets, I think that the Dawn X will be a real disruptor to that segment. It will offer a compelling, lower-priced alternative with stellar technical performance, excellent sound, and a smooth, easy-to-listen-to tuning. I also think the Dawn X, as I said, makes a logical upgrade from the Performer 7 or the Cantor, so long as you can afford it. Speaking of the Cantor, if you tried it and you just couldn't fit it properly and it didn't work for you and it came across as harsh, this will be the answer to that. You don't need to worry about the fit as much with this. It will just sound how it should sound. If you're looking for a one-and-done kilobuck set and you already like the awful house sound, you own something like the Explorer, for example, the Dawn X is a pretty excellent way to get your endgame kilobuck IEM and just be done with it. The Dawn X is just such an easy-to-like IEM. It was extremely popular at CanJam, and I've been daily driving it since I got it in the mail. However, I mentioned this earlier, sadly, it's going to be leaving me very soon. I'm going to send this unit off on tour to some other reviewers so that you can have more opinions besides my opinion on this. JTIS is going to be touring his set, I'm going to be touring my set, and together we're going to get as many reviews as we can of this IEM. I will have a pinned comment in this video with links to other reviewers from our group that are going to be doing this set. I want to bring more exposure to my fellow reviewers, but more than that, I want to give all of you watching more data and a more varied set of opinions so that if you're going to spend this amount of money, you can be better informed. You'll find the pinned comment below. I'll update it periodically as reviews come out. I think there's 2, maybe 3 already out, so keep an eye on that on this video just to get more opinions if you're even considering buying something at this price range. I think just having as many reviews as possible of the same IEM is a good thing. And that's going to be it for the AFUL Dawn X, officially the most expensive IEM that I currently own. I'm really going to miss this set when it's out on tour. It's headed to Enigma Photos next. Link to his channel up here. He does reviews on a lot of very expensive, very nice IEMs, and I'm interested to see his take on this. Coming up next, however, we've got something completely different. It's going to be the DD Hi-Fi Memory. It's a semi-in-ear, flat planar, DSP-only IEM in collaboration with Moondrop. That's a very interesting one, so stay tuned for that review. For now, though, I just want to thank you all so very, very much for watching and for all your continued support. Massive shout out, as always, to my Compadres Club members. I really appreciate you guys. $5 a month, and you get a say in the direction of this channel by choosing what I review with your membership money. Helps the channel become more independent from review loans or from tours or from other things, and gives you guys a chance to pick what I review. As always, however, I really hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you all so very much for watching. This has been Omar with Audio Amigo Reviews, and I will catch y'all next time.